Happy Friday! It is the first Friday of the month, which is Sexy First Friday, and now I am just waiting for Sam to join, and then I will invite her in. Oh, here she is, and here everything seemed to be working, and so now we're just kind of waiting for her to join. All right. Just accepting, and let's see here. Hopefully we don't have any issues with having her join us today. Okay, I'm accepting, but for some reason it's been a little bit fussy. Hopefully we don't have any issues today at all with having her join. All right. I do keep inviting her in, but for some reason it's not allowing me to let her in here. So hopefully, oh, it says that she's unable to join. So I'm going to try to invite her and see if we can get everything working okay. And if for some reason it doesn't, there you are, yay! The first time it told me you couldn't join, so I was like, oh no.
Yeah, that took a minute.
Well, this is why we came on early today, so that if we had any of these issues, nobody was having to sit here with us.
Yeah, it's good because it's 11 now, so it worked
Yeah,
out perfectly.
it worked out perfectly. Well, it's another Sexy First Friday. I cannot believe that we are in November already. Like, where did the last few months go? We'll just go into quickly introducing ourselves today, and I'll just talk a little bit about today's topic. But today's topic is Ask Anything. So if you are there with us live, ask any questions that you may have. We also had some people send in some questions, and so don't hesitate to ask sort of as we go, but I will quickly introduce myself and then have Sam introduce herself, and then we'll get into the questions that we were asked. So my name is Lyndsey. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, certified sex therapist, IA accredited professional out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I have a private practice where I specialize in relationships and sexuality utilizing the Enneagram. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Sam?
Sure. Sam E Greenberg. I'm a sexuality researcher and Enneagram and sexuality coach. And my research focuses on mostly the link between sexual desire patterns, sexual expression patterns, and type, as well as dominant instinct. Hopefully, everyone who is joining probably knows us already, but we always just introduce ourselves real quick in case there's new people. So, like Lyndsey said, this is Ask Me Anything month. So we have a whole smattering of questions that cover all kinds of areas of sexuality and the Enneagram, and we're excited to answer those. But we will be prioritizing if anyone who's here live wants to send in a question in the comments, we'll answer yours first. So feel free to send in your questions as well. I guess we can just dive right in.
That's the thing. Why don't we get started? And I think you were going to do the first one, so I'll let you get started on the first question.
Okay, so one of the questions we got is a two-parter, so we're going to answer both parts. The first part was, how often do you recommend, and this is a general Enneagram question, so we're starting general, we'll get more specific into sexuality. The question is, how often do you recommend someone retake the Enneagram test? And this person said, I'm thinking about how we develop and grow over the years. So I talk a lot about this because I studied the whole, as part of my research, I studied the whole methodology of Enneagram testing and how we type and everything. And the issue with Enneagram typing tests is that they're not so accurate. And the designers of the test will tell you that themselves. Depending which test you're taking, there's between like a 60% and 80% accuracy, but that's actually not that high. So what we recommend for typing is actually different. Generally, like the expert recommendation would be, if you're going to take a test, that's fine, but that's just a starting place of finding your type. What you probably want to do is a whole self-discovery process, as well as you can work with a trained professional to do an Enneagram typing interview. Sometimes that's a little more accurate. But related to this, this question is implying that your type will change over time. And this isn't the case. So we do for sure look really different over our life, depending on a lot of things. But that's not to say that your type has changed. In fact, that's probably a good indication that you've integrated such that you're incorporating and using a lot of the qualities of some of the other types. So it becomes like less obvious that you are a 3. The most obvious time that your type's going to show for most people is going to be like their teenage years into their 20s, when we have really strong ego differentiation happening. I think I might be getting too technical. Anyway, so your type is the same over your whole life. So someone who meets me now might say that I don't seem so 5-ish. You know, a decade ago, I seemed very much closer to a stereotypical 5, but I'm still a 5. It's just that I've transcended some of those qualities. So you don't necessarily need to retake the test unless you're still on your typing journey. And that journey should be a whole holistic journey that has to do with self-discovery, as well as working with experts, as well as, you know, reading about all the types. Okay. That was maybe a little long there. So the second half, which Lyndsey, I'll kick it to you and we could both answer this, is this person said, what is sexuality, if this was a 3, what does sexuality look like for 3s?
I think with 3s, one thing is anything with the attachment triad, so the 3, 6, and 9, is oftentimes they're looking to the partner to sort of anticipate or expect what's going to happen sexually. So they're going to accommodate, kind of look to, and 3s in particular are looking at more of like, what do I need to be impressive or successful or precious sort of in the sexuality realm. So they're often looking to the people around them, or even societal images that they have gotten around, like what is good sex, and like what does that look like, and how do I like sort of perform or become that. I think you're going to see, like we've talked about before, just with instinctual stacking too, is like you might see this a little bit different in your sexual instinct dominant 3s, which might have a little bit more assertiveness and ability to kind of like ask for what they need or want. But I think all of them, despite instinctual stacking, are sort of looking to like, is what I'm doing impressive to you around sex?
Exactly. There is, and again, like all attachment types, there's a lack of awareness of the internal experience. And for 3s especially, their sort of id energy is all outer focused in the world, like achievement focused, even like athletically focused, but it's not usually focused on what's going on within themselves. So you know, you wouldn't necessarily expect this from 3s unless you know them well, but our poor 3s really don't often know what they like or want or what brings them pleasure. It's all about, you know, sort of the image of what it looks like they're bringing pleasure to the other person. And then you can also get almost like a sportification of the sexual act, where like the 3 is trying to like go the longest, be the strongest, like do the most, and it's not, and intimacy can get lost. So those are a couple of the things that would be going on with 3s.
Yeah, I think definitely touching on that point that like the Enneagram types in the attachment triad really oftentimes don't know what they like or want unless they've done a lot of work on themselves to get in touch with sort of what is pleasurable for them, which I think can be unique to them compared to the other types.
And that's 3, 6, and 9 if you're new to what
3, 6, and 9, yeah.
triad is. Okay, so the next one was going to be, Lyndsey, for you. At least the first part. So someone wrote into us saying, I've only had sex with one person and I was with them for 8 years. Now I'm in a new relationship and I'm struggling to orgasm. Any suggestions? So that's sort of like general sex therapy stuff. So that's all you.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of factors that can sort of go into orgasm. And so like if we've been with our, if we had been with a partner for 8 years and we had a lot of trust and security and safety, it might have been easier for us to sort of let go in the sexual experience and have more pleasure. So it could be potentially that, I haven't established enough of an attachment or connection or bonding yet to the current partner that I have. So I have more difficulty sort of letting go in the sexual act that is happening and occurring. I think also sometimes it's like, do we know what works to reach orgasm, right? So maybe my previous partner was better at doing that and sort of knew what worked, but do I understand sort of the mechanisms that go into making sure that I know how to reach orgasm? One of the sites that I love that I think is great for women around sexuality, I don't have an equivalent for men, unfortunately, but the OMG Yes has got some really great like videos on self-pleasure there, and that they'll actually have like what I love about, like, as a sex therapist, I was like granted access to it when it first came out, just kind of free access to it. And it's such a great resource because like it actually has it has videos of women sort of explaining sort of what works for them and what doesn't work for them. So you have a video of actually somebody going through like sort of here's what works for me really well in self-pleasure. And then they actually also have like diagrams and little like here's things that you can try and different kinds of strategies. And so like if it's I'm not sure what works well for me to reach orgasm, it's a really good site to go to where it has different types of like self-pleasure, different ways you can do self-pleasure that other women have said that work well for them. And you might be able to find one that works better for you than others. And I think that the second note of this was like, well, how do I tell my partner, right? And I think it's one of those things that I will say in sex therapy, like if we can't talk about sex with our partners, we probably shouldn't be having it. Yet it's so difficult for us to actually like have these conversations with our partners. Sometimes what I've had couples do is that, just that like, hey, like I'm not sure this isn't quite working for me to reach orgasm. Would you be open to like exploring with me or watching some of these videos on OMG Yes? Sometimes people watch them together. They can try out techniques and things like that as well. But I know, especially in an early relationship, right, it can be hard because you want your partner to know like, hey, what you're doing is working well, and not hurt their feelings or make them feel bad. But like oftentimes it's like every relationship. I don't care if you've had like 1 to 100 partners. Every time you have a new partner, you have to relearn what works and what doesn't work, which means really having those open, candid conversations around sexuality. And there are some, like, I won't talk about it here, but there are some books and things like that that can offer some great tools to sort of have those conversations. And if that's something that you want, feel free to personal message me, and things like that as well. And I can give you a few different like book resources that are great just to kind of, are some of the things I give clients to just start the conversation around sexuality as well.
And generally speaking, when we ask people, are you open to receiving feedback from your partner about how to make their sexual experience better? People all say yes. But then when they imagine, giving feedback, they're like, no, my partner will hate it. They're not open to it. And what most people find is when they do open themselves up to giving feedback, the partner is really receptive and usually really grateful for it. So that's a barrier to work through. I also want to mention here, to bring in the Enneagram, about sexual assertiveness. Depending on your type, it can be much more difficult to have these conversations and to say, I want this, I don't want this, to initiate sex, I believe the author of that question was a type 5, and 5s do struggle with assertiveness more than some types. Are kind of in the middle with sexual assertiveness. So depending what type you are, when it comes to talking to your partner about sex, you have more barriers to work through to get there, for sure, depending on your type. Okay.
Yes, in particular, like, well, my type 2 as well. 9s really struggle with that as well, or even knowing what we like. But you're right. I think that there are going to be people this is easier for, and there are going to be people that maybe need me more resources. And if you go back, we talk a little bit more about in previous Sexy First Fridays, we talk about the types that are more assertive and the ones that are less. And if you are one of the ones that are less, you're probably going to need more resources. And it's going to be like, I might need a book to have the conversation, or I might have to push through uncomfortability to sort of ask for like what I need or want. And it's going to be hard. But also I think like what a great growth point, right? To have to be assertive around your own sexuality and pleasure.
And it's worth it. It's worth the work that you have to put in together. Okay, the next question I'm like assigning to you, Lyndsey, because it's about nines. So someone wrote in and said, I'm a 9, been with my husband who's a 1 for 18 years. I'm realizing how much I have merged. What now?
I think the first thing that I typically say, in particular, like with 9s, is like, are you paying attention to your gut intuition? So I know for myself, I'm a 9 as well. And one of the things that would happen is like my gut was always sort of telling me, you know, what if something was a yes or no. Like you'll have that gut like, this is a no, or this is a yes. Like you will kind of intuitively know if something's a yes or a no. And like, do you find yourself then reasoning that away to sort of accommodate what the other person wants to make them happy? And so I think one thing is like getting more in touch with the body sensations, and like really when your body is telling you no, like giving yourself the space and the time to decide how you're going to assert yourself, which as a 9, one of the things I've always said is like, even though I'm significantly better at this today, it is always very high anxiety even now. So I will say things to myself of like that ability to assert myself creates more calmness and peace later on. So I'm willing to go into high uncomfortability now for the longer term, what I want, which is more peace and calmness. And so even today, I'm significantly better, but I will have like, oh, do I really have to like, do I have to say what I need or want here? I really don't want to do this. They're gonna be mad at me. Like all these thoughts are still there, but I have found like how much we get more of what we need and want in relationships. I think also with this one too is, you know, like, do you know what you need or want? Like getting more in touch with needs and wants and desires. And like one of the things that I love like about the nonviolent communication styles, like they actually give you like, and you can look this up online as well, and I can definitely provide it as a resource, but they talk about like emotions you feel when needs are being met and emotions you feel when needs are not being met. And then they give you, they actually lay out for you several different needs that people have. And so really getting in touch with like, you know, do I understand the emotion that I'm feeling? And then, you know, how do I get tuned into or tapped into what the need is? And yes, diet, smoking, and Cokes, it is very similar to 2s as well. 2s will struggle with this too, because they want to make sure that they're being as helpful as possible to the partner and anticipating needs. So I think it's interesting. Yes, 2s and 9s can look very similar in this way.
So usually to differentiate between those two types, both on the surface, looking outside, looking in, are going to be acting the same. But what I see with 2s is there's like you have yourself and you've picked that up and put it aside on purpose so that you can get love, you can get acceptance, you can feel, you know, connected. Whereas the 9 is like, it's all gauzy, cloudy fog in here. And the 9's not taking it and putting it aside. They're like not even finding it. So if we got, the advice is like pretty similar, but if we got very specific, I think the advice for 9s is like, if you don't know your yes and no, you don't know what's going on within yourself, you need to get away, like get by yourself, get into nature, get really grounded to get in touch with those instincts, that gut yes and no. For a 2, it's going to be more working through the fear of the rejection you might be afraid of getting when you take that self that you put aside and start bringing it back into your relationship, which you probably can. You probably know what you want, but you're going to be really reluctant to express it. So that's a very subtle difference. But for 2, I think it's going to be more self-work of overcoming, bringing that stuff in. And for 9, it's going to be more self-work of getting grounded and getting in touch with what you actually want. I hope that makes sense.
Makes sense to me.
Thanks for the comment. We love comments. Okay, so the next question from friend of Sexy First Friday, the holistic pastor. Oh yeah, Diet Smoking Cook says if you show a desire or a need, it might drive them away. Like laughing face and scared face. Exactly, exactly. So for twos, that's the greatest fear. Like if I have a self, I won't be loved. Nines, it's like this is not a conscious process. Like they're merging without even thinking about it.
I think that's a good point talking about that, Sam, too, because like even just like me, I like you it's like you almost like my guess is the person that wrote this question, it's like almost you wake up one day and you're like, oh my God, like who am I? Where am I? What do I like? What do I want? I'm resentful, I'm frustrated, I'm irritated because I've been accommodating the partner the whole time. But you almost don't even realize that you're doing it until you've been doing it for a very long time. And I've ended up in longer term relationships, like my previous relationship where I was like never advocating or asserting myself, and then you end up just mad and you don't know why you're mad.
And that's when you can get the classic nine stubbornness, the holding out when they don't even know why they're doing it. So yeah, maybe we need to do like a whole episode on nines one day. Okay, so back to our next question from Holistic Pastor said we can mention that it was from her. So she was asking, what's the deal with self-preservation? I'm paraphrasing. What's the deal with self-preservation dominance and foreplay? Because are they into it or not? Because we've talked a lot in the past in our instinct episodes about how self-preservation dominance, for them, sex is more about the body's pleasure, and they're quite into energy conservation. So if a partner needs tons of foreplay, they may not want to output that energy. But her question was like, well, does that mean that all self-preservation dominants don't like foreplay because it doesn't really mesh with her experience? So Lyndsey, I really liked the answer you started giving. Could you just rephrase that here?
Yeah, what I had said was is it's not that self-preservation dominants don't enjoy foreplay. It's just the question is like, is it going to give to the bodily pleasure? So some self-preservation people might need the foreplay to have more of the body pleasure, and some might just be like, that seems like that's too much energy. I'd rather just move more to the orgasm and getting to what is going to be pleasurable for me around sexuality. I think what the difference is like when we think of like sexual instinct dominance, for instance, they want to like play with sexual energy, right? And that actually they get more out of the playing of the sexual energy than they do actually out of the physical act of the sexuality. And so the self-preservers are going to be very focused on the physical act and the physical pleasure sensations in the body, where it's not that sexual instinct dominants don't like that, but like it's kind of like the icing on the cake is really the first part, right? That part of that like playing and that back and forth and that energy and that mystery and all of these types of things. As a sexual instinct repressed, I still don't fully understand, but it's just that difference in that way. So yes, self-preservers like foreplay, but they might not need it to have their pleasure, right? It might just be like, do I need it or not? Like, what's me the most pleasurable and most energy efficient to sort of get the pleasure sensations out of sex?
I want to add kind of a metaphor. So like a regular relationship metaphor for this difference would be if you get a self-preservation dominant who has a crush or there's like feelings between them and someone, the self-preservation dominant is going to be kind of driven crazy by the unknowns of that until they or the other person is like, hey, I like you. Let's just lay the cards out on the table. The sexual dominant, that basically ruins it for us. Like, I do not like when people do that. Because we love the mystery. You know, is it going to be a thing? Is it not going to be a thing? And just like playing in that tension. So it's not that either one of those instincts doesn't like having crushes. Like, they both like it. But the self-preservation wants this more practical, like boom, boom, boom approach. And the sexual dominant would want more of this mysterious, amorphous approach. This also applies to sex and foreplay. So a self-preservation dominant who does like foreplay, they probably want it to be like effective and, you know, efficient foreplay, whereas a sexual dominant might want to spend like hours or a whole day, you know, playing with that energy and not even getting to intercourse or to deeper sexual intimacy. So that's more of the nuance, I think, on that question.
I was going to add too is sometimes it depends on what's in the second position too. So your self-preservation sexual instinct dominant person is going to look a little different than say your self-preservation social. So you might get the self-preservation within / sexual instinct wanting a little bit more of that playfulness, but they're still going to be more body focused. You're going to see a lot less of that when the person is self-preservation social. Like it's going to be about bonding and connection cues. The sexual instinct is supporting the self-preservation. So they do look really different. And I think that that's also one of the things to kind of keep in mind. And I know that we talked about the repressed instinct the last time, but those stackings do make a huge difference in how people present.
Definitely. Okay, are we ready for the next question? Okay, so
I think so. And then we're almost to the end already.
I know, it went really fast. So we have another question with 9s in it, interestingly enough. This one's about 5s and 9s, so we're both going to answer it from our perspective. So this question says, I'm a 5 with a 9 partner. Will I ever get them to initiate or dive into kinks with me, or should I give up? So I guess I'll start, because from the perspective of the person who wrote in the question, in a 9-5 dynamic, relationship or otherwise, quite often, and I'd say majority of the time, the 5's going to end up being the more assertive person, even though 5s are famously unassertive. So 5s can become really frustrated and feel like there's so much burden of assertiveness and initiation for sex, if it's a sexual relationship in this dynamic, because they don't want to be doing that either. And if they are doing it, 9s are very comfortable stepping back and letting them. So I guess that's the first thing, is I just want to validate the frustration of this person who wrote in. And let's kind of break it into 2 parts, because I think we have enough time to do that. So there's the initiating sex part and there's the kink part. Lyndsey, do you want to talk about the initiating sex part, and then we'll circle back to the kink part?
Yeah, it was interesting when you and I were talking about this particular question. I said, I wonder if the 9's actually giving signals of initiating and the 5 is missing it. Because I think that 9's are very subtle in their initiation, and 5's really need this like direct, clear, communicated initiation. And I think that there can be this more subtle, like, you know, kind of like, what was even the right word for it? It's not like, it's like coy. Coy is probably the right word. 9's are more coy in their way of initiating. So they're giving you subtle signals. They're looking at you. They might touch your arm briefly or these types of things, but they can be missed by the 5, because the 5 doesn't get that that's what the person's actually trying to do. And then the 9 oftentimes, well, then if they're not getting it, assumes they're not interested, they're afraid to push it farther, they don't want to cause the conflict or the issue or concern. It can be the 5-9 dynamic can be a really hard one to initiate and move into sex, because both people are pretty passive and kind of want the other person to sort of be the initiator. So I wonder if the 9 is giving signals and the 5's not picking up on it.
So a good place to start for you, question writer, it might be go to your partner and say, like, are you giving me signals to initiate sex? And like, if so, can you tell me what those are? Like, I really want to know, but I think I'm missing them. And just have a conversation about it. And hopefully this 9 is healthy enough that they will know if they are doing that or not. 5s in research, we found that basically they miss cues. They're not responsive to essentially any type of sexual desire cue. They're more of this practical, direct approach to sexuality of like, hey, do you want to do it now? Would work for a 5, versus all these subtle things, they're going to miss it. So I think for this couple, it would be a matter of meeting in the middle. Of the 9 is going to have to be more obvious than they are comfortable being. The 5 is going to have to be more tuned into subtle, less in the head world, more here in real reality, shared intimate reality, and more tuned into the subtle, and maybe they can kind of meet in the middle there. In terms of the second part of this question, which was how can I get them to dive into kinks with me? So this is a tricky area. So fives, also in research, we found that fives tend to be very into kink, along with twos and fours. Surprisingly to some, right? But that's what we found. So when you start wanting your partner to do that with you and you have a 9, the big barrier is the 9 may not know whether that feels good to them or not, whether they feel comfortable with it or not. And they are prone to doing things kind of like going along to get along and with something they don't actually want to do. So if you're getting a lot of resistance from this person, like passive resistance, there's probably an issue with them feeling comfortable around kink stuff. And they probably aren't comfortable telling you that. So instead they're like dragging their feet or, whatever you're experiencing. So like we said earlier with our earlier 9 question, the 9 really needs to get in touch with their gut instincts around what's okay for them and what's not okay, what they're willing to try and what they're not willing to. And Lyndsey, I know you recommend this exercise with a sexuality book. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I have a book called A Little Bit Kinky, which I kind of call my vanilla kink book, and it's really just a great book where it's broken into little paragraphs that shares different ideas. And I think that that's a really good way for everybody, but especially like a 5 and 9, where it's like maybe I have a harder time saying what I like or want, or maybe I don't even know what I like or want. And so then you can kind of pay attention to body sensations, emotions, and thoughts as you're sort of looking through the different scenarios. And it becomes this external thing then that like we're having conversation about the book. Like I'm not bringing in something that I like with that fear of rejection, but then we can kind of find where we overlap and then being able to have more organic conversations around sex. And I will try to make sure that I like put a link to what that book is as well. I don't know the author. I bought it many years ago. I just thought it was such a great book that this person created because it's just broken into like little chunks and it's vanilla kink, so it feels safe for people to kind of like venture into that. And then you can always expand on that if you want to go into more of a substantial kink, something like roping or bondage or S&M and those types of things. And it's just a really great place to start to know what you like or don't like.
So it all starts with communication, essentially, for almost all of these questions. Is you got to be communicating about sex before you can have great sex, which is easier said than done. And we're already at the end, Lyndsey. That went so fast.
Oh. It did. It went really, really fast. I can't believe it. And then we don't have our topic for next month. So if people have ideas or things that they want to suggest to us, feel free to like message either one of us and let us know. And then I forgot, we have our sexy chat. In 2 weeks we have our sexy chat. So if you want to join us, to do that, it's just a Zoom link where you can join us. It's donation based, so pay what you can, where we'll just kind of go over what we talked about today. And because it's Ask Me Anything, I mean, really what we're going to be doing is you bring in your questions and you can have the two of us for a full hour to ask whatever you may have questions about as far as sexuality, relationships, and the Enneagram. And so we are super excited to do that. And then that will be in 2 weeks. So it's always the third Friday at the same time. And you just send us a private message if you're interested in joining, and then we send you the link to Zoom via email to do that. And then our December one will be the first Friday in December, Sexy First Friday. And like I said, we don't have a topic yet, so if you have ideas of things you'd like us to address, feel free to message us, and we can put that on as one of our ideas. Anything you would add, Sam?
No, I think that's it. We're really excited we just started doing the sexy chat in September. So we're really excited for people to start joining that. And it's basically like a small, safe space, small group discussion on sexuality and the Enneagram, and we can get way more in depth. So for example, if you come with a relationship question, we can dive deep into that more than we can here. So we hope to see everybody there in 2 weeks.
Yes. Well, thank you. It was great to see you again, Sam. Thank you for everybody that joined, and then hope to see you in 2 weeks, and then we'll see you again in a month here.
Bye.
Bye.